Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the People and Health Overview Committee on the 13th of September 2025 at 6:30 in the evening. We have no apologies, and so we've got a full committee, so welcome everybody, and welcome to the officers attending as well, and the Cabinet members, very important. We've got quite a busy agenda because we've got 3 reports today. Anyway, can I ask any member has a declaration of interest that they wish to make now or when the report comes up? Nope, no one. Number 3 item, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of July. There's no questions or matters arising from the minutes. Unless it's about their accuracy. Anyone? No? Thank you. We'll take them as read then. And public participation. We have no questions received from members of the public. And item 5, questions from councillors. We have 2 questions submitted by Councillor Robin Legg, who cannot attend, fortunately, and I will be reading out the questions that he has put forward to the council, which I can find here somewhere. And it's about the empty homes strategy. Newell House, Sherborne, has been unoccupied for more than 2 decades, is becoming increasingly derelict and a location for antisocial behaviour. Only last week, the police wrote to Dorset of their concerns and warned that the Fire and Rescue Service regard the listed building as a high risk of arson attack. How will the proposed empty homes strategy be used to bring Newell House into residential occupation? And I think there is a response that Cabinet Member Councillor Joel Taylor, as for Health and Housing, will give.
Thank you. I'm Councillor Jill Taylor. I'm the Cabinet Member for Health and Housing, and I'd like to respond to Councillor Legg. I'd like to thank him, first of all, for his question. I think it's a really important one and one that has caused quite a lot of questions from his area. It would not be appropriate to discuss the details of a specific case in the public forum. It is a matter of public knowledge that Newell House is a former school building which has been unoccupied for some considerable time. The strategy being brought before members is focused on domestic accommodation only and specifically excludes action in relation to non-domestic buildings and dwellings. Whereas councils have specific powers to deal with long-term empty residential dwellings, corresponding specific legal provisions are not available for non-domestic buildings, whose reuse is generally subject to market forces. Despite this, the council is aware of this building and action has been taken by Building Control, Conservation and the Housing Standards team to liaise with the owner, secure the site and protect against unauthorised entry. Dealing with buildings and land of this type on this scale sits outside of this strategy and requires specific corporate funding and a multidisciplinary team to access and mitigate financial and other risks and to assess any viable way forward. So I think at the moment, the risks are really high of taking this one forward, but it doesn't mean we're not doing anything. We are in the background doing a lot of work on Newell House. Whether it actually comes to anything or not will have to be wait to be seen, but that will certainly have to go back through committees because of the size of it.
And the second question submitted by Councillor Robin Legg. Recently, the BBC conducted a survey of local authorities to establish the number of long-term empty homes in each and whether the problem was getting worse. The article inferred that many authorities were more interested in the increased council tax revenue generated by empty properties than solving the empty homes crisis. Dorset's response to the BBC Freedoms of Information inquiry showed a significant deterioration between 2029 and 2025. I think it was 2019, sorry. The number of homes empty for at least 12 months rose from 6,404 to 7,716 in that 5-year period, an increase of 25.5%. Long-term empty commercial properties saw an even steeper increase of 55%. How can members be confident, therefore, that the empty home strategy proposed by officers will bring improvement? Response from Jill Taylor again, please.
Thank you, Chair. I won't bother introducing myself again. But once again, thank you, Councillor Legg, for the question. The Council's empty home strategy is a positive local response to what is a national issue. As with a lot of statistics, such data needs to be treated with caution. The above figures, likely obtained directly from the council tax baseline data, define empty properties as those unoccupied for 12 months or more, paying long-term council tax empty home premium. 12 months is a short period empty, and based on our experience, this data will include a considerable amount of churn, with properties empty pending renovation, sale, planning permissions, etc. This strategy focuses on properties which have been empty for at least 2 years, as these are more likely to represent genuine long-term empty properties. The overall number of empty properties are largely caused by factors outside of the Council's control. In part, the strategy focuses on those very complex empty properties which will not return to use without some form of council intervention. These are the real empty homes that we need to look at. The strategy sets performance and reporting criteria based on the current resources. This will enable members to monitor progress. The strategy will also maintain better data on trends, enabling us to assess the effectiveness and direct resources. As stated previously, this strategy focuses on empty residential dwellings, and commercial buildings are outside of its scope. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill Taylor. Thank you very much for that response. So we move on with the agenda. We've got number 6, which is urgent items. We have no urgent items. And so we move straight on to item 7, empty home strategy, which will be introduced by Councillor Jill Taylor, Cabinet Member for Health and Housing. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to bring the empty home strategy for consideration by the People and Health Overview Committee. This is the first empty home strategy for Dorset Council. The strategy has been informed by our overarching housing strategy, and it forms one of the 16 themes of our housing strategy delivery programme, the Homing on Housing programme. This empty home strategy has been developed in partnership, taking views from a wide range of stakeholders. Action on empty homes impacts teams from across the council, including planning, which we've just heard a little bit about, legal, council tax and building control. To mention but a few, internal consultation on the strategy has taken comments from these relevant teams. The strategy has also been subject to a cross-party councillor task and finish group, and the Homing on Housing officer and members groups have also looked at it and commented. The empty home strategy sets out our aims over the forthcoming years to bring more long-term empty homes back into use. The benefits are wide and varied. At a time of high housing demand abandoned empty homes are a waste. Bit by bit, action on empty homes reduces pressure on our new build development. Day to day, empty homes also blight our communities, impacting residents' sense of safety and civic pride. The strategy will aim to tackle the most complex, long-standing empty homes, which will not come back into use without our intervention. The strategy outlines how we will tackle this issue. In many cases, advice, information, assistance, and critical support may all be all that is needed to get an owner of an empty home on the right track and the house brought back into use. The strategy outlines all the wide-ranging tools available to officers to assist, including financial help, VAT reductions, and expert advice. Just to be clear, our enforcement powers are used as an absolute last resort to firstly manage the effect the property has on the local area, such as dealing with rubbish, pests, and unauthorised access. In a small minority of cases, this can ultimately lead to us considering taking over the management or ownership of an empty property to get it back into use. Taking over a house in this way is only necessary and appropriate for a very small number of cases. However, the fact that such action can and is taken usually focuses owners' attention to act well before that point is reached. The strategy details performance targets and the reporting processes including in an action plan for future development of our approach. And I'm happy to pass back to Chair to ask for questions.
Thank you, Councillor Jill Taylor. Have we? Yes, we have. Yep, Byron Quayle. Oh, sorry, Ryan. Sorry, I missed you first. Right, Ryan first, and then Byron.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Ryan Holloway, Ward Member for Wareham. I just wanted to ask the portfolio holder on page 12 on the report of 6.1, where it mentions about the allocation of the financial figures of 600k, and then it states that it's going to be reducing to 500k to 28 to 29. I was wondering, could the portfolio holder possibly enlighten the committee as to why is that figure reducing? Thank you.
Right, have we got an answer with one of the officers, or are you going to Jill Taylor? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. When it comes to the financial things, if I can ask an officer to answer, that would be really appreciated. So if I can hand you over and introduce you to Steve Marsh, who's our recently appointed Head of Service in this department.
Thank you. That was the allocation that was requested going forward to enable us to progress into the future with our sort of plans. I think ideally, there's always a limiting factor to the impact that we can have. That's either in relation to the number of officers that we have doing this work. Currently, we have 2 full-time equivalent officers carrying out that work, or it relates to the capital allocation that we have to potentially purchase property voluntarily or via compulsory purchase orders. So the capital allocation is a balance between that officer allocation or officer workforce and what is seen as a appropriate figure based on those resources. Obviously, a change in either one of the allocation enables more officers would mean a need for more capital and vice versa. So that's how it's been pitched going forward.
Have you got a supplementary?
Yes, I have. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you for obviously explaining that, because that was sort of puzzling me, that was on that. But I think is there an officer, I think, that wants to just probably give a bit more detail to the committee, so I'll pass that over to him.
Thank you. Andrew Billany, I'm Corporate Director for Housing and Community Safety. Not absolutely support what my colleague has said, just that there is in future years, if an opportunity arose for an empty home which was more than that, it would be treated on its merits. So if there was a particularly compelling reason to invest in an empty property, that's something we've done in the past. That's working capital, which, as Steve has said, has been appropriate for the scale. But we would never turn down a particularly important opportunity on the basis of that budget if it made financial sense. So it's not as rigid as it may appear.
Thank you, Andrew. We'll move on to the next person. It's Councillor Byron Quayle. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Councillor Byron Quayle for Blandford. And actually, thank you very much for that, Orion. That ties into a few questions around that very topic, so that's quite convenient. The first question, whether it is to the portfolio holder or an officer, probably a portfolio holder's reply, I would suggest. 600K, I understand the response from the officer, but that seems to me grossly, it's a very, very small amount. If we're talking about all the need, this report says all this need, and it's 600K. I mean, it seems to me as a tick box amount, saying that we're doing something, but we're not really putting a lot of funds to it. So if we could, my question, if I build on from Ryan's, because he kind of asked that question, is whether, taking into account that this is an overview committee, and my issue has been in the past that it seems to be more scrutiny committee than an overview committee, was this committee engaged, or EAP for members of this committee engaged in a figure that we would have put forward to the officers to then work through the system? Or has this just been come up as an officer or supply-led decision?
Yes, Jill? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'll start the answer to that, and then I will hand over to officers. First of all, the 600,000 may seem quite low, but that is just the purchase price of a house or a property. But please always bear in mind that we will then own the asset. So it's not as if we're losing money on this. That is then available for reinvestment once we then dispose of the property or whatever we choose to do with it. It may be seen as low, but then you've just had the response from Mr. Billany that basically if we need more money, it is available and we can find it. With respect to how the figure was raised at, I think it's a historical figure, first of all, but it has gone through the Home in on Housing member board and also the officer board, and that has stayed unchanged in that. Having said that, if you want to put the figure up, I'm quite happy. So, can I just go to officers just to see if they want anything to add to that?
Byron, are you happy? No, someone else wants to speak? Sorry.
On to that as well. Yeah, thank you for that question. I think one thing to bear in mind with the strategy is that the purchasing of property voluntarily or by compulsory purchase is the exciting part of the strategy, and it grabs a lot of headlines, but it's not actually the bulk of the work that goes on within the strategy. In the document, you'll see a pyramid about where our action is focused, and you'll see that the formal action, the purchasing of property, only happens in a very small minority of cases. It's the tip of the iceberg, I think, is the phrase I would use. The majority of our action comes about through constructive dialogue with owners and a sort of incremental pressure if we don't get immediate response from an owner. Then we will move through an incremental process of gaining that cooperation, if you like. And the fact that we have this money to buy property, it often means that owners act before we get to that point. They realise that we have that there is. We mean what we say. I think quite a lot of owners are surprised when we go in and offer to buy a property, or we move towards compulsory purchase. And the mere fact that we can do that quite often means that we don't actually have to access that money, but we need that money to be able to go through with our intentions should that prove necessary. So in the vast majority of cases, we go right up to the point of purchase, and then the owner does something, because they're concerned about us taking that property away from them. So this is why the figure, we've heard mention of, yes, more money would be suitable, but that actually has proven quite useful over the last few years, and is not wildly off what we actually need to perform in relation to the strategy.
Thank you. Byron, do you want to come back?
And thank you for that. I get all that. But in the previous reply, you said that we work into the team that we have. That's why we need this money, because this is the size of our team. Therefore, if you had a larger team, you could theoretically do a lot more stuff, and you would need a lot more money. That's the point I'm trying to get to. So I understand your explanation, and with that 600K coming down to 500, blah, 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 that's fine. I don't agree with it. I think it needs more money. I think, Jill, you need more money to do what is a fantastic thing. Let alone, if you read the report, one of the properties is in the area that I represent. There's more properties in Blandford that we could do, but you haven't got the capacity and the funds to do it. I understand the whole process, and sometimes you get there, or sometimes you get mugged around and they say, oh, we'll go to auction, and then they don't, they do, and they don't, etc. So that's the point with that. I'm just trying to say that as an overview committee, I'm new to it, so it may have been discussed before. I just think more money should have gone into this, because we could do a lot more, which could do a lot more benefit for residents of Dorset. That's my point.
Thank you. Yes, Jill Taylor.
If I can just come back, that's a really interesting comment that you've just made, and I'd actually really appreciate it. It's interesting that the amount of houses that we can bring back into use is directly related to the amount of staff we have. And I will always be asking for more staff and more money, because the more staff we have, the more houses we can bring back into use. And to a large extent, they basically pay for themselves. So I'd be quite happy if you want to recommend something from this committee, but let me just pass over to the boss. So for a comment first.
I couldn't possibly take that. Just an additional point. Given a sort of a preview of a paper that will be coming through this committee and cabinet later in this calendar year around our wider approach around investing in bringing about new homes. So something, and I know Councillor Quayle, the property we were talking about only recently, we'd be looking at other ways to either facilitate a sale to a sympathetic party. There could be other ways of dealing with a whole range of opportunities which come our way from a building. So I don't want to move away from the focus of this paper, though. It's quite a specific area of work, and I think Steve, my colleague Steve, has explained some of this is where we're looking to work with an owner to get it back into use. But it doesn't stop us in other circumstances to look at sites, to look at land, to look at opportunities that are in front of the council. For a number of reasons. It could be for care leavers. It could be for homeless accommodation. It doesn't stop us doing that. So it's an it depends answer. I'm not being very precise, but it's that this is a tool that gets us a property back, but it doesn't stop us looking at opportunities where they're in front of us. And that's an activity that we'll be bringing in front of this committee in a couple of months' time, is how we're making best use of our available land, buildings and assets.
Thank you, Andrew. Byron, was it the same sort of thing, or is it carry on, or a different question?
It's in reply to that, if I say, and that's the point that I keep making about us being an overview committee, because as opposed to a scrutiny committee where we scrutinise the end product, to a degree, this seems like scrutinising the end product. And I would have liked to have seen, again, I'm new to the committee, so it might have been done, but probably not if what I understand from what was said, if we had jumped in and said, well, if as a committee or as a council we value this work, I have nothing wrong with the report that's been presented. I think it's good work. But this committee may have recommended more funding that can go up to Cabinet, and then Cabinet can say yes or no. Probably no, but hey, there you go. We're commenting on what seems to be a done thing as opposed to something that we could have input in. That was the point.
Comment on that? No. I think that we've got to move on at the moment. We've got several other people. Thank you, Steve. I think you're in line. I think we've got Jane Sumper online at the moment. That's remote. So, Jane, are you ready? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I want to acknowledge, all the work that's gone into developing this empty home strategy, and obviously the successes that have occurred over the past few years, with all the evidence gathering, the stakeholder engagement, the comms, which has sought to engage in the wider communities for people to come forward if they're aware of properties that are empty. And also, obviously, there's been a few, I think there was one compulsory purchase. So given all that groundwork that's gone on, and the proposals in here, how can you ensure that all that work on the ground, especially in areas where the homes have been persistently where you've attempted to contact and had contact, and you get into this cycle where those interventions haven't been fruitful, you've got the capacity to deal with that, and I know that's been discussed this evening, but it's pretty fundamental, and I know it can take a really long time because obviously there's a whole legal process to go through, and often you find the actual owners of the property may live abroad, and sometimes they don't even know that they've necessarily got that property. So just some guarantees around particularly focusing on the ones where you've had a lot of correspondence going backwards and forwards over a period of time. Is there a sort of set time where you will say, right, that's it, we're going to CPO, or is that sort of flexible? And also, I guess, but following actually on from Byron, is at what point is this going to be? Is the performance going to be coming to People and Health Scrutiny Committee?
Thank you, Jane. Yes, Councillor Jill, please.
I'll start on this, but then I'll probably pass it over to either Steve or Andrew to continue.
Jill, just one thing before you start. No one can see you on screen. It's not. You may not want to be seen. I don't know.
I'm on road.
If you use that mic, then the camera's focusing.
Is that better?
That's better.
There you go.
Okay. I think possibly for this question, I'm going to pass straight over on to either Steve or Andrew. I think for the work they do, it is a whole process, and it's as you say, it's never quick. But to me as well, it's also the decisions about whether we go for the quick wins or the long ones that take a long time to sort out. The ones that take a long time and a lot of resource to sort out are often there for a reason. They're a lot harder to find. And recently we've even employed a company to do some work around finding who the property belongs to after the death of the owner. And that took a huge amount of work. If I can hand over to Steve to answer this, I think that would be a lot more sensible.
Hi, Steve.
Thank you. Well, I mean, we currently have a caseload of about 200 active properties that we're dealing with, all in different sort of stages of the process. I mean, a lot depends on the cooperation we get from the owner when we contact them. If we feel that we can work with the owner and we can work with them within a reasonable time period, then that is always the process that we'll follow. I think we move quite quickly to a decision as to whether we feel we need to escalate cases where we're not getting that type of support from the owner. I mean, that can relate to, there's a couple of aspects here in relation to enforcement. One relates to the impact that the property has on the local area. So that can be from the appearance, can be from squatting, can be from pests and rubbish. So that's one area where we can take much quicker action to reduce the impact the property is having. The longer term option, that CPO option is really reserved for those cases where the property is having, maximum impact on a surrounding area. Because in the end of the day, the work is very much around human rights, the rights of the owner of that property versus the rights of the local community not to be affected by the blight that property poses. So weighing up those human rights, and when they're stacked in the favour of the local community, that is when there's a presumption in favour of acting more formally in those types of cases. There's no set time period for that, but we look to make that decision, as early in the process as possible, to decide whether it's a case where we think we can progress, or where we think that we may just have to manage the situation. And in some cases, we do just that. We have to manage the situation to reduce the impact on the local residents rather than acquire the property itself.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone? Jane, do you want to?
I reckon. Thank you, Beryl. Yeah, I recognise. Obviously, it's this is all about balance, really, more than anything else, and getting that right. And I know that Steve, you've been able to do that in the past, but 200 active properties is quite a large number to be managed by a relatively small team, which is also going to be difficult to balance, isn't it, getting that right? But clearly you'll prioritise what you think you can action quickly and those that you can't. But I look forward to the performance data coming to people and health scrutiny when this is bedded in.
Thank you, Jane. I don't think that needs a comment. Can we pass on now to Alex Furman, Councillor?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm kind of Councillor Quell, you raised some really good points. I'd like to sort of come off the top rope with that as well. Is number one, we're looking at this balance between budget and officer efficiency within that two-person team. Like you, I'm new to this committee, and it does feel like a finished product, and I feel like we should actually have some input into this in respect of getting that expertise from officers, from portfolio holders, to know is that balance being struck between, as you say, Steve, the number of people in that department to the budget, and is there the work here in this committee that we can do to recommend that there's a change in that? And I think, Councillor Quayle, you were kind of alluding to that, weren't you, in terms of, is that balance between team and budget there to get the best efficiency out of it? Because like we've said, 200 properties is a lot for a small team. And on that 500 as well, I think, housing inflation is around about 8%. So it's not just a cut of 100,000, it's more than that. And I think, in terms of the council's long-term strategy around housing, and not so much, having to build homes, but also take use of homes so we've got more of them. I know personally, because Steve, you've done some great work in and I think that CPO is probably the one in my ward, and the great work that did, me having, people knock on my door regularly asking about that property, I can see where that works and I can see where that affects residents. But to the question is, officers, do you think that there is the maximum efficiency in that budget to staff balance that we as a committee might be able to shift that forward? And very much, Chair, I would like to know, do we have that input as a committee? Can we make that recommendation? Because I would like to see this committee get in on the ground level rather than wait for it. As Councillor Somper said, quite rightly, it'll go to scrutiny, but can we do some work on that at this point? Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Alex Furman. Yeah, I think that, as much as you can, if you can alert people to empty homes and then actually be part of that empty home being progressed, I think that would be helpful to local members. I don't know if that's at all possible. I certainly had that in the past when I was involved in a CPO for the Purbeck District Council, and it did take a long time. It took about 6 or 7 years to do it, but we did pursue it and it was followed. And I think that any interaction that you can have or going forward, that would be good. Anyway, Jill.
I was just going to come back quickly on that one. At the moment, we're just starting the budget setting process. And I think what would be most useful is if this is what this committee is minded to recommend, if you recommend that to Cabinet and then it can go in as part of the budget setting process for next year. That's entirely up to, it depends what this committee would like to do.
I think that we could, thanks Jill, we could actually put forward some sort of recommendation in that form, if we got a form of words that would be acceptable to do that. What would you put forward and what would be acceptable, Jill, for that? Thank you, Alex.
Just within my original question was just to see if we could ask officers to give that expertise and give that context around that balance to staff ratio, just so we could probably have a better idea, committee, of where we're going with the recommendation.
Sorry, I'm feeling a little bit put on the spot because I don't have the figures in front of me. I mean, at the moment, we have 2 members of staff. I think Andrew wants to come in a moment. And you've seen the annual budget that we've got within our financial part of this paper. If I can just transfer to Andrew, I'm quite happy to have a recommendation that says we want more into this, but it's how it's worded. I mean, you can put any figure you want, but it has to be what we can actually work with. Just a second.
Yeah, I don't want to answer the question in a vague way, but we are to repeat the point that Councillor Taylor said. We're entering a budget round, so I think it's a matter of looking. We'll go away before on the route to Cabinet. There's comments from several members here about looking to achieve more. So if members are happy, we can work that up into I think we need to cost that. And I think just an observation. I think we may have been a little distracted by the capital amount, because what my colleague Steve March has said. It's really about the activity. There's the 200 odd cases that we're having at the moment. We need to do the calculation of what would be the benefit of investment in more staff. in that activity. I'd say I think we get the gist of the spirit in this room to do the calculations about how, if we invested in more stuff, what would be the results. But I'd say beyond the remit of this, we have a budget process about to start. I think it's something we would have to consider that in the round. I hope that makes sense. But we can certainly, I think we get the message from members this evening, don't we?
Thank you, Andrew. I think it is, obviously this paper has made strides and the strategy has made strides in the right direction. But if we want to add anything, I think it would be probably to add it on after this strategy has gone through, and then we can add something to it. Or I think George is kind of commenting.
Members can make recommendations from this committee, and they can make a recommendation now to Cabinet, should there be a proposal in the seconder, and we would have to come up with some form of words. And that would go on as a recommendation to Cabinet, either to accept or to reject. But if you were looking at funding, then there might need to be some work outside of this committee for officers to look at the amount of funding that might be possible to go along with a Cabinet recommendation.
Who wants to follow that up? Yes. Okay, Steve.
Good evening, Steve Mercer, Blackmore Vale Ward. I don't know whether I'm coming to this from the wrong direction, but when I look at that £600,000 facility you've got, I would call that more a working capital facility, because there's got to be a different mechanism whereby we purchase these properties and move them on very quickly. My good friend here is a modest landlord, and he tells me that if he buys a property that needs doing up, he does it within 3 months. Now, I walked past the West Street property that you've got in Blandford Forum, and a good job has been done converting that. It took 3 years. I wonder whether there's a mechanism whereby we can purchase these things on back-to-back, sell them to a social landlord, or put them straight into an auction to move them on. Because commercial landlords won't take 3 years to bring it back into, won't take 3 years to get it to earn them a return. And we shouldn't. Why are we buying? I assume we're buying these properties up and the council is holding them in some mechanism or other, whereas actually, wouldn't it be better if we were just turning them over all the time, so 600,000 became a working capital facility? And how many of Steve, you were shaking your head then, I've clearly got something completely wrong, but I reserve the right to come back to you in answer to your response.
Steve, yes, Councillor, or are we going to have Steve?
Yeah, the purchase of property is a last resort. If the owner has made that mental leap that they're going to dispose of the property, and it is often that process, then they will always be encouraged to sell the property on the open market or at auction. For whatever reason, sometimes the owner will only sell the property to us. I suppose we're a cash buyer. We can act quickly with minimum fuss. If we're going to acquire a property, it immediately becomes part of our asset that the council owns, and therefore we need to decide in a structured way what we're going to do with that property. Some properties that we acquire may be of use to us as an asset that we can repurpose. And an example of that was a property that we purchased in the Plocks in Blandford, which was repurposed for temporary accommodation. Some of the properties we acquire, we decide we don't want to deal with it. It's not a property that's any use to us, and the most efficient thing that we can do is sell it on immediately. And this is what happened in Councillor Furman's ward, where the property was acquired voluntarily and then sold within 6 months. So the turnaround, we have to go through a process with our asset team to dispose of that property, and we don't want to miss any opportunities to repurpose that property in a way that would be a benefit to local residents. However, the presumption is in favour of basically flipping these properties and selling them on as quickly as possible. So I hope that provides some reassurance. And what we'd always do is we'd always have a buyback clause on the property as well. So if we sell it at auction, we would want the ability, because what we don't want to do, and this has happened privately, where a property has been bought at auction and then kept empty by the person that buys it. So if we're going to sell a property like that, we'd always have a buyback clause within a reasonable period of time so that we can get that property back if the owner doesn't do anything with it. I think that's highly unlikely, but it's just something we want to protect against. So the presumption is in favour of that quick disposal.
Thank you, Steve. Andrew Bellani.
I'm partly answering the question. You just wanted to answer the question, but also you're correct in describing it as working capital, by the way. That's just if that helps understand the paper that we're giving. I'd just slightly broaden out the point now around, it's the point I was trying to make with Councillor Quayle's question, is if there's a building or a property which hasn't had our intervention through the Empty Homes programme, we're a strategic housing authority. We will look to see whether a housing association or another interested party is interested in that building. We will always look actively to what that solution is, and what Steve just described is when we bought it and flipped it to another use, we will always look for a quicker solution than that if it exists. So and we do, part of our work with, and Councillor Taylor, Jill's part of the discussions that we have with our housing association registered providers, we always talk about those kind of things, as in what's your appetite for acquiring properties, acquiring land next to properties. It's something we will do more broadly than this particular strategy. So two answers to the two additional points. Is correct about this being working capital and rolling in to some degree, but also it's part of a broader approach to our, it's a administration commitment is to rapidly increase the number of homes that we build and acquire. But that's more often than not done through partners. This is a description of what we will do ourselves, where we need to intervene. There's a bigger story than that.
Thank you, Andrew. Steve, do you want to come back?
So I meant to preface, Jill, to say I wholly endorse what you're doing here. But two more questions. One of them is a plea for a bit of help, actually, at the end. But can I ask, how many properties do we as a council own and actively let?
Yes, Andrew, if it's possible.
Tune in to the Place and Resources Scrutiny Committee on Thursday, where this will be discussed. It's in circa 250, and it's a question which is currently being worked through, because whether that's a children's home, a care home, housing for temporary accommodation, we have properties in a number of different pots in this council, but it's roughly 250. But the figure we'll be discussing this at Place and Resources Scrutiny on Thursday.
Yes, Steve?
Come back. Because it's probably what members may not be aware. That's why the nature of our authority is most of our accommodation is done through partners, is managed by housing associations and private providers. So that's the nature of our work, which is why we're in the habit of always looking to others to provide the solutions. We intervene and own as a last resort, because of the nature of, we haven't run council housing as such for 20, 25 years.
So when we've had discussions about
Through the chair, please, if you want to come back. Yeah.
fucking thing, when we've had discussions about Dorset Council becoming a social landlord or building council houses, I thought that was a larger, more philosophical debate we were having, whereas it seems actually we do that. If you want to build more, just dispose of some of the ones you've got. And this is the plea for a bit of help. I go to Shillingston Parish Council every month. Next to their filling station are 5 homes which are about a foot out of the ground, and there is nothing we can do to get that builder to finish them off. And when I've said till I'm blue in the face to Mike Geraghty, why don't we say to these people, you've got 5 years to finish them, not just 5 years to start them. And then a lot of these homes will get built. Sorry, that's just a bit of a bugbear, because this lady in Shillingston bends my ear every month.
I do think that that is a little bit outside this remit of this particular report. So I think we need to move on. But yeah, we can note that point, but it's not really relevant. We have, yeah, I think Alex wants to come back.
Thank you. Alex Verman, Western Ward. Sorry, I didn't say that earlier. I'd like to make a recommendation, if possible. I'd like to, do you need me to say it exactly, don't you? Yes, George. This committee recommends that the empty homes strategy budget is maintained and that priority be made into increasing staffing capacity. Sorry. This committee recommends that the empty homes strategy budget is maintained and that priority be made into increasing staff capacity, or staffing capacity, whichever way you like it.
Yeah, thank you. Very, very good. I think George may have that. George, can you just read it back to make sure? And if we've got anyone else wants to add anything, then we will. I think Ryan wants to perhaps add something. George.
That the empty homes strategy budget is maintained and that priority be made into increasing staff capacity.
Ryan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, it really wasn't nothing for me to add there. It was that I was just really just highlighting the fact that obviously that as my colleague has now proposed that recommendation, I'd be more likely happy to second that recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you both. Well, as we've got a proposer and seconder, George, can we have a show of hands for those that would support that, please? Show of hands. Yeah, that looks as if it's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll put that forward as a recommendation. That would be 2.2, yeah, to go forward. Thank you very much. I don't think there is any more questions, or has anyone else got anything to add? Oh, right, yes, Byron, thank you.
Apologies, Chair, but I do have a further question on this, and it was regarding how is the council or the offices assuring value for money in its acquisition and renovation of these empty homes, and what oversight mechanisms exist to prevent financial or reputational risk? Clearly, we can understand where this question is coming from.
Thank you for the question. Jill.
I am going to bounce that one to an officer. I don't know which one would like to take it. Take your pick.
Yeah, if we acquire a property, as I said, it becomes part of the council's asset portfolio, and then any work on that property is then subject to the normal sort of asset management plan and asset management groups where papers are taken to, scrutinise that, cost-benefit analysis in relation to whether we retain the property for renovation and repurposing, and that would depend on whether we have a need in the council for that type of property, whether it be in children's services, adult services, housing, temporary accommodation. Where we don't have that need, then the recommendation would be that it's disposed of immediately.
Thank you, Steve. You happy with that?
Thank you for that. So that's for the acquisition, and it goes through the system, and the system says, yes, there's a need. I get that, and if there isn't that need, and we've just used it for a particular reason, and it shoots out. But if we then keep hold of that, and we take the small little pot we have of 600 odd grand and say, well, let's go and do this up, what assurance do we have that a 20 quid job isn't cost, I don't know, say 310 quid? That's the point I'm trying to get to. What if that's just in assets? Well, then I'm a bit concerned, clearly. What checks and balances do we have within the Officer Department of Housing that that you could give us, that we're getting good value for money, and if we buy a property, you tell me it's 100 grand, and that's 100 grand, we know it's good value for money. That's the point I'm trying to get in. What is the checks and balances within housing?
Andrew or Jill? Andrew. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. It's slightly repeating the answer in a way. We have internal processes to whether that's tendering for works, the oversight we've got a capital strategy board, for example, that assesses that exactly those points about the value and whether it's comparable costs for a purchase in the first place, comparable costs, whether it would be more cost effective for us to intervene ourselves or dispose to a housing association. Without going into fine detail, there are groups and processes such as tendering, such as schedule of rates, works, that just check on the point you're making, that you're spending £20 on £20 job, not 300. So it breaks down into that kind of detail. But we've got a scheme, Hardy House in Portland, for example, that's been worked on at the moment, and I'm close to that. And that's something where, as director, looking at that, asking exactly those questions: is that value for money that we're doing it ourselves? And if not, what are the alternatives? To trying to describe the internal processes, and where necessary, we'll escalate for a change of tack if those costs seem to be too high.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. And I think we've had a full debate on this. Oh, we've got someone else coming back. As long as it's not anything we've already had, Ryan, I think we had a full debate on this one. But yes, okay, Ryan, one last question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, I will be brief on this one. It's just regarding around the compulsory purchase orders. So obviously, since 2021, we've only ever had to use that mechanism once, I believe. Do you see that we may have to use that CPO sort of order? Will we have to? Yeah, try and rephrase the question. Can you see us in the future maybe having to pull that lever in the future on other properties in the future? Basically, because we've only ever had to do it once, really. And I'm just curious the fact that I get the feeling we might have to use that maybe a little bit more often. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we've pulled that CPO trigger, I think, 6 times. What tends to happen is that the CPO process isn't quick. There's various correspondence which goes to the owner and anyone with an interest in the property, and often what happens is that as that literal pressure is cranked up on the owner, they will find alternative ways in which to deal with that asset. And that is what's happened. We've had properties repossessed, we've had properties sold, we've had properties offered to us voluntarily in lieu of the CPO. So it's only one case that's actually gone the full distance, but that doesn't mean that we haven't, started the process with 5 others. And I think that sort of emphasises that, at the top, to actually complete a CPO is at the top of the tip of the iceberg, because in most cases it just won't get to that point. And it's just all part of that, all part of that pressure exercise. Almost certainly we will need to pull that trigger again. We have probably 5 to 10 cases that would fit that mould. Also, as part of the strategy, what we're looking at is developing other legal remedies around what's termed compulsory leasing, which is called empty dwelling management orders. So this is where we take over the management of the property for a 7-year period, renovate the property, rent it out. The only disadvantage with that is you then give the property back to the owner after that 7-year period. So, you can see there's sort of pros and cons with each process. And often what we're doing with these properties is we're dealing with the worst property on the street. When you talk about buying a property, often you're told, aren't you, buy the best property on the street, or we're often acquiring the property in the worst condition, which is why, back to that issue about disposal, often the figures just don't stack up for us to do the work on the property, and it's a case of disposal. So yeah, I hope that answers the question in some respects.
Thank you, Steve. I think we can move now to the recommendation and the added recommendation. So the recommendation is we need a proposer and seconder for this to recommend to Cabinet that it approves the adoption of the empty home strategy, and then to include the second one that George will read out now. Just read out that. Oh, sorry.
That the committee recommends to Cabinet that the empty home strategy budget is maintained and that priority be made into increasing staff capacity.
Thank you. So have we got a proposer for the whole thing? Thank you, Ryan. Seconder. Thank you, Jindy. And all of the committee, do you approve? Thank you very much. Looks like it's unanimous again. Thank you so much. Moving on now to the next paper, which is Domestic Abuse Strategy, introduction by Councillor Jill Taylor, Cabinet Member for Health and Housing. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, Chair. For this one, I'd like to pass for the introduction. I'd like to pass for the introduction straight over to the team behind me. I think it's probably Ian who's going to be introducing this one for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Ian Grant, the Community Safety Programme Manager. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, good evening, committee. Ian Grant, I'm a programme coordinator within the community safety team based in adults and housing. So really just to introduce the item, so the council's been working with its partners for many years to tackle domestic abuse, and the introduction of the Domestic Abuse Act in 2021 was a good opportunity for us to look at that legislation and use it to help shape and strengthen our local approach. So you'll see within the strategy that's been developed in conjunction with the Dorset Community Safety Partnership, and the reason for that is the Dorset Community Safety Partnership has adopted the role and function of the local partnership board, which is one of our statutory duties under the Domestic Abuse Act. And whilst the legislation is focused on the council, this is very much a partnership strategy and it will be delivered through the CSP. One of the things that we've really tried to do since the legislations came into effect is to make sure that any work that we have done is channeled through our sort of existing structures. We try to avoid any sort of duplication and really trying to build on our existing work. So kind of in that vein, you'll note that the legislation is primarily around safe accommodation. However, our approach in Dorset has always been about considering the whole system. So at a high level, there are sort of 3 main aims at the core of our strategy. So prevention, We want to stop domestic abuse from happening altogether. So that means focusing on activity and initiatives that are preventative. Victims and survivors, so we want to ensure that anyone subjected to domestic abuse has access to the right support. And then offenders, so making sure that offenders are being held to account for their actions, and those offenders or those people causing harm who wish to change their behaviour, we've got the mechanisms in place to support them. So before I sort of talk about the new strategy, I thought it'd be helpful just to reflect back on the progress we've made over the last 3 years since we implemented the first strategy. So we've made significant investments into the local offer and improved processes. So just a couple of examples, we've invested in children and young persons workers, and they work out of our refuges and also within the community. We've developed really sort of strong pathways with our housing colleagues. That includes dedicated domestic abuse housing officers who, again, not just support people coming to the council with issues, but also go out to our services and to our refuges to support those people with any sort of housing issues that they have. We've also undertaken extensive research into domestic abuse and helped shape national policy, and we've continued to raise awareness in innovative ways. What I would say, this strategy is really an evolution of the work that we've already done. The most noticeable theme that you'll see, or you'll probably pick out, is the focus on accessibility. Whilst in Dorset, I think we're all really proud of the offer that we've got and the work that partners have done. But we know, listening to those in the sector or people who've been subjected to domestic abuse, and through our own research, that there's still people in our community who find it more difficult to access services than others. We know, for example, younger people or those people who have an older age will find it harder to access support. And also in Dorset, we have the uniqueness of being a rural community, which again, we know brings its challenges, again, for accessing support. So this strategy is really our opportunity to build on the work that we've undertaken and sets out our approach that we will be taking to tackling domestic abuse for the next 3 years, again, with that real focus on accessibility. That's probably it from me, but happy to take any questions from any member.
Thank you, Ian. Yes, the first question we have is from Councillor Ryan Holloway. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, absolutely, wholeheartedly, support this paper coming to this committee tonight, because this is something that sits quite close and personal to me, because domestic abuse absolutely has no place in our society whatsoever. So really grateful to have, obviously, this paper here tonight. I just want to ask about our sort of comms strategy on this. What are we sort of doing to help to make sure that we can reach out to those people that are suffering with domestic abuse, and what can we do as a local authority and us as local members? What can we do to sort of give them the confidence maybe to come forward and report it and things like that? Because like I said, unfortunately it is something, as we all know, it's happening on a very daily basis. It is. So what can we do as a local authority and us as elected members to help those people that are suffering out in our county, of how we can help them come forward to obviously support them? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question and your support for the strategy as well. There's probably two parts to that question. So in terms of the actual strategy, we obviously have to publish online, and we'll be doing comms around that. But just more broadly speaking, and to the second part of your question, we undertake sort of awareness raising campaigns throughout the year. There's a couple of national campaigns within the year that we do quite some intensive comms work on. And we've always really been trying to be innovative around our comms work. So your point about elected members and what you can do to support. So we've actually got an offer within council. It's called the Dragonfly Project, and I think we've spoken about it not just at this committee but also at scrutiny before as well, which is free, and it's available not just to obviously elected members but to people within the community. And what that's about is about really taking a community response to domestic abuse, because it's not just about statutory agencies, it's about all of us having that responsibility. So perhaps after this committee, something we can do is share details of that. It's completely free, it's accessible with our specialist domestic abuse provider, and that really equips people with the knowledge about what services are there to support people, and how, if you're approached, how you can then support somebody into those specialist services.
Thank you, Ian. Do you want to come back?
Yeah, thank you for your response on that, and I would be very grateful, and I think the committee would be grateful if you could obviously help share that information that you have just given in your answer to that question, because that's something that we can, as individual members here, we can go back to our wards and our sort of communities to help promote that better, because I think that's really important, that is. So I would be grateful if you could share that with the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Is that possible, Ian?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. We can do that after the committee. It's fine.
Right, we have Stella, I think, the second question.
Yeah, this is an excellent strategy, and well done to everybody who's put it together, including the community partnership. Because at one time, back in the 1980s, when I first was involved in trying to set up a refuge in West Dorset, many councillors just didn't want to talk about it. It was a hidden thing, and people did not want to discuss it. Since then, it's been much more open. People will discuss the problems with domestic abuse, and a lot more people have reported it. But it's still very worrying when you read this report that it is underreported by the elderly. There's quite a lot of abuse, hidden abuse, in elderly households. And it's not reported at all because that was what happened in the past. But it's equally worrying that young people are not reporting it. And very worrying, given the climate in certain parts of the country, talking about accepting violence and accepting abuse in situations. It's worrying that young people especially are not now reporting it. And I think we ought to try our best to make sure that it's good to report things to the police, to a counsellor, to anybody else, but don't just sit at home and sit with abuse.
Thank you, Stella. I'm not sure that needs more of a statement, but if anyone wanted to make a comment, I quite understand where you're coming from with that. And yes, thank you, Jill.
I will just come in on quickly on that one, and I'm going to sound a little bit like Molly Rennie for anybody who knows her. Domestic abuse problems, issues are huge. Statistically, 1 in 4 women suffer from domestic abuse at some time in their life, and 1 in 6 men. There's a number of homicides associated with it, and having brought coercive control into the domestic abuse field has actually increased the work quite considerably. It's not all right that kids are exposed to it, and it's not all right that teenagers think that it's all right to abuse each other. I see it time and time again on telly and in the media. Just something like, you're pretty, well, you're pretty awful. No, that is not acceptable. And if we see that at all, it really does need calling out. I just wanted to make a plea, just keep your eyes open for it. If you look at 1 in 4 women, 1 in 6 men. Thank you.
Thank you, Cabinet Member, Councillor Jill Taylor. I think we're all actually aware that we should actually notice if families are having a problem and actually try and make them aware of the help out there. Okay, shall we move on? I think we have Jindy next. Yes, thank you, Jindy.
Thank you. Jindy Atwell for Coal Hill and Wimborne East. There's just a couple of things on here in terms of priorities. One was prevention, and the other was offenders. I know the third one in the middle is probably the one that we're focusing on the most, but I think prevention is very important. And it's kind of linked a little bit to what Stella was saying about young people, but there's a bit on here about early education and intervention, including children and young people. I just wondered what we as a council are actually doing in terms of that, because I work in a school, that's my main job, and maybe I don't feel like I see that happening, but, you know, it would be interesting to see what we're actually doing there, particularly as we know peer-on-peer abuse is quite significant, and probably in some of these families, we might have teenagers who are attacking parents as well, so it's domestic abuse in that sense. The other thing is I'm just interested because it said the increase in reports has gone up 24%. And I know this isn't what this is about, but I just wondered in terms of offenders, we've got this zero tolerance, but what does that actually mean? How many people are actually going to court? How many people are found guilty? And what's happening when we find them guilty? Are they doing prison sentences? Because you've put in about prevention, linking that to activities to try and stop perpetrators continuing what they're doing. So I just kind of would like a few figures, basically, to make me go home and feel I can sleep tonight. But also just in terms of what are we doing with children and preventing them from committing these offences, either as young people or when they become adults. Thank you.
Thank you. Jill, or... Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. So firstly, just in terms of children and young people, so over the last, I guess over the last 3 years really, since the first strategy, firstly, we've made sort of, I guess, significant investments in terms of the support for children, both within the refuge and within the community. But we've also been working closely with our colleagues in children's services as well. So you may have heard of Safeguarding Families Together project. So we've been working with them on our sort of commissioning cycle to make sure our services are aligned to one another. And as also, and not necessarily part of this strategy, but we've also been doing work within the sort of serious violence duties. And through that, there's been a lot of work around sort of healthy relationships. So people going into schools, and these are specialist providers who are going into schools to provide that education to children and young people. It's obviously an area that we do need to develop, and that's part of this strategy, which is making sure that, you know, our response and our offer is accessible to everybody, not just people who, you know, traditionally offer to access the services. In terms of the sort of reoffending rates and other things, I haven't sort of got the figures to me, but we have undertaken research this year actually around repeat offending, because when you talk about the data of domestic abuse, we always talk about it with increases in incidences and increases in crimes. And quite often that's quite difficult to explain, but we do an awful lot of awareness raising, which means hopefully what that means is more people come forward to report domestic abuse. However, the research that we've done more recently, like I say, has been looking at repeat offenders. And what we've actually seen is that has actually plateaued over the last sort of 18 months to 2 years. So one would hope actually the work that we are doing, particularly from an enforcement or for managing offenders, is working. Obviously, it's something that we continually have to monitor, and there's lots of different interventions in place. We have things like high harm perpetrator panels where partners come together to discuss maybe a serial perpetrator of domestic abuse and put in actions to address that offending. But we've also got things like perpetrator programs as well, because sometimes there are people within the community who are undertaking behaviours that are causing harm but actually want to change their behaviour. So we have behaviour programmes in place to support those people as well. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, anyone want to come back on that one? No? We've got Byron, yes? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Byron Quayle, Blandford Ward. And I appreciate this has actually kind of just been answered to a degree. But how does, turning to the strategy, how does the strategy ensure that services are accessible to underrepresented groups? And more particularly, and how will this be monitored?
Yeah, Ian? Be through the chair that I direct things, so it's a bit, yeah, so really that's what you have to do, so I'm sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I think in essence, as you say, the strategy, the main theme for it is to make sure that the work that we are doing does enable those people from different cohorts or different communities to access that support. So there'll be, behind this, there will be sort of detailed sort of delivery plans that we'll be working on with our partners to improve the response. In terms of monitoring, obviously this has been overseen by the Community Safety Partnership. And we will have sort of annual updates through that partnership. We actually had an audit last year which highlighted that was one of the recommendations that we needed to undertake. So hopefully with that and our sort of performance measures, we'll be able to monitor the strategy and its effectiveness. I think Andy probably wants to say a couple of things.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. No, it was just to make a point, really, that I think one of the things we've made real strides with in the last few years is our understanding of the dynamics around domestic abuse. So we've been proactive in trying to understand who is accessing our services, who isn't accessing our services, what the offer is and how that needs to change. And that did form part of the recommissioning of our services recently, and we're sharing that with partners as well. I think we're at a stage where we've realised there are some groups that aren't accessing our services as much as we would expect. So we haven't actually got the solutions to that yet, but it's been an identified thing that we want to make sure that those people are able to access. So from now on, we're looking to develop those services, change those services, look at what the issues are around people accessing them so that we can build those into the future. So that will be monitored and that will be pursued. And I would like to say that in a year's time, we will be in a different position in terms of seeing the demographics and the type of people that are coming into our services.
That was Andy Frost, yeah?
Thank you, Chair, and through you. So, as I understand it, you're effectively saying that within your department, your team, you're aware of the issue. There isn't a formal mechanism, but you will hope in the future to find a formal mechanism to monitor that?
Andy, yes?
Thank you, Chair. I should say who I am, actually. Andy Frost, I manage the community safety team here at Dorset Council. Yes, so I think one of the things that we've, as I mentioned, one of the real developments for us is rather than just assuming that our services are being well used by all the different people that we'd want to use them, we've actually taken the time to look at that evidence, and that's highlighted that there are people that aren't accessing the services as much as we want. That's what we've identified. We're now trying to understand why that might be. So for older people, for example, that might be much more of a cultural thing and much more acceptance or tolerance of what is unacceptable. Once we have that, once we develop that understanding, that will be then about developing new aspects to our services to ensure we're capturing those groups. For us, that's really important. It's much better to do that than assume that we are meeting all the needs of our communities and just assume that that it will be actively monitored by the Community Safety Partnership as one of the key themes of the domestic abuse strategy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And just to offer some sort of reassurance, really. As I said earlier, we've made sort of investments in the local offer over the last few years. And specifically within the sort of safe accommodation offer, if you go back a few years, predominantly the offer we had would have been refuge. But over the last couple of years, what we've really done is invested in our sort of target housing offer. So this is about making sure that people within their own homes have access to the support and the safety measures that enable to stay at home safely. And we've already seen through the monitoring of that contract, actually the demographics are a lot more varied. So people with disabilities are possibly more likely to access that service, men, for example. So we've seen that through some of the innovation that we put into place already, and hopefully something we can build on to.
Thank you, Andy and Ian. You okay, Brian? Yeah. Thank you very much. Now, we've got John Orrell. Yes?
Thank you, Councillor Orrell, Malcolm Regis. My question will be about page 109, deprivation. In general, I completely agree with the report. I will be voting in favour of it. It's a good report and it's good progress on this important issue. My question is, a lot of the time, there can be a blame of the perpetrators, which is fair enough. They shouldn't be engaging in abuse. But abuse doesn't occur out of a clear blue sky. It occurs in a context. And 109 of the report paints some of that context, which is socio-economic deprivation. There's an excellent book called Spirit Level by Professors Wilkinson and Pickett, which looks at nations and countries and the gap between rich and poor and how it correlates with all sorts of outcomes like teenage pregnancy, crime, drug abuse, and in particular, domestic abuse. So I note the response you have there. It's a kind of supportive response, but I put it to you, it does nothing to address socio-economic deprivation. So I'll give you an opportunity to, how are we going to address deprivation? I have a follow-up depending on your answer.
Thank you, John. Yes, Andy, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's the challenge, isn't it? Is one of the different aspects that goes into the mix of creating a situation of domestic abuse. It's not really, I would say, it's a much wider issue than the scope of the domestic abuse strategy. And looking at tackling deprivation as part of that is not going to solve the issue. There needs to be a bigger approach around deprivation, of which then that resolves the domestic abuse elements of that, is how I see it.
Thank you, Andy. Are you okay with that, John? Yeah. Yes, I know. Yeah, and thank you, Steve. Oh.
I win. Good evening, everyone. Steve Robinson, Litchfield Matravers and Upton Ward, portfolio holder for adult social care. The issue you raise is very real and doesn't, I don't want to use the word just, but I will, because it doesn't only affect issues of abuse, it affects all sorts of issues of employment, health, disability, transport, travel, the whole thing. And therefore, this is something that needs to be addressed as a cross-directorate and whole council issue, and then the benefits from addressing it in such a way will be felt by these individual initiatives. But I totally agree with you. The government has recently announced, Chris Whitty recently announced some additional support, particularly for those areas near harbours and the waterfronts that have particularly high levels of deprivation. We're looking to see what the outcomes of that will be. But you raise a very, very real issue that affects so many of our residents across so many areas of their lives.
Thank you, Steve. John?
Yep, thank you for the replies. I'll give a couple of specifics then. One, a small one, is why is the council charging the most parking for the poorest part of Dorset? That's a small example, but it's an example of where we're making things worse for the most deprived with our parking charges. The bigger point is tying it back to the previous item of housing, to really make that effort of getting more emphasis into getting housing, because a lot of the deprivation is increased by private rents going up and up, people being evicted and facing great rent increases. So we really need proper social housing, which doesn't have right to buy. That's a challenge for us.
Thank you, Councillor Orwell. I'm not sure Jill's going to answer that. I'm sure that there is a challenge to it, I know, and it does go across lots of areas. It's the strategy does not stand alone. It's obviously embedded in the whole of the council. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you. And I know we're going slightly off topic at the moment, but I think one of the objectives of this council and this administration is to increase the affordable housing that we have and to improve the housing generally across Dorset Council area, with particular reference to some of our more deprived areas. As you'll probably be aware, we've got the Housing Reform Act, Renters Reform Act, coming in fairly soon, And we're waiting to see how that pans out and what new burdens money we're likely to get for that and how we can implement that. But I think, as you say, we really have got a problem generally with housing. Rents are far too high. The quality of our rented property, well, some of them is really, really good, and we have got some excellent landlords out there. We've got some that basically could do with a bit more of our support to improve their properties. And basically, this is a work in progress. If you come across any, please report them either to me or into Steve sitting next to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, John, you're okay. Thank you very much. And thank you. I think we've now come to, Stella, yeah?
Because of what John just said, I think we must remember domestic abuse does not just happen because of poverty. It happens in all sorts of households, and that's important to remember. It's not just because of poverty. I mean, that
Thank you, Stella. I think that now we've come to the point where we have a proposer and seconder, and a vote is needed for the recommendation. And the recommendation is to ensure the council meets the statutory duty under the Domestic Abuse Act 2021 relating to preparing and publishing a domestic abuse strategy. So have I a proposer? Yes, thank you, Byron. Sorry?
Can I clarify something? The recommendation in the report is to recommend the adoption of the strategy to Cabinet. What the Chair just gave out was the reason for the recommendation.
Sorry, I overstepped my mark there, I think, but the Cabinet does that, so sorry about that. Yes, we are looking for a seconder. Jindy, and all those in favour? Thank you. I think that's unanimous again. Thank you very much, everyone. I'll move on to item 8.9, age-friendly communities, and this will be introduced by Councillor Steve Robinson, Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care, and I think he's got an interesting video to show us in the introduction. Thank you, Steve.
The place where we live can have a huge impact on our health and well-being. Age-friendly communities make it possible for us to continue to live in our homes, participate in the activities that we value, and contribute to our communities for as long as possible. In an age-friendly community, older residents are able to shape the place where they live, where local groups, councils, businesses and residents work together to identify and make changes in both the physical and social environments, such as volunteering, employment, transport, housing and the design of streets and neighbourhoods. Developed by the World Health Organization, the Age-Friendly Communities Framework is built on the evidence of what supports healthy and active ageing in a place. Becoming an age-friendly community requires political commitment. It means listening to the voices of older people and working in partnership to deliver on an action plan. A growing number of towns, districts, cities, counties and city regions across the UK are working to ensure that more people can live healthy and active later lives. Together, these places make up the UK network of age-friendly communities. Through its affiliation to the WHO, the network is linked to over 1,000 other cities and communities in more than 40 countries. We want more communities to join the UK network and help create places where more people can enjoy their later lives. Let's take action today for all our tomorrows. Let's make ageing better.
Thank you. You have in front of you a short paper, but it encompasses a big vision. Making Dorset an age-friendly county will benefit everyone, particularly older people, yes, but also those with infirmities, with disabilities, everybody within our communities, and of course, those who are not yet old, but will be. Before I probably start, I'd like to recognise and thank the leaders of the various parties who have all contributed towards the thinking of this paper, but also to the ongoing development of the processes, and also the many different councillors that have been involved and had input into the process over the last few months. My thanks to everybody. I'd also particularly like to recognise the work of the previous administration, as this builds on the work of the Thriving Communities programme that they were involved in setting up and has now been running quite successfully as a prototype model for age-friendly for the past 6 months. This is already becoming a cross-directorate piece of work, and it affects every aspect of our residents' lives. In the last few weeks, I've talked to the planning department about incorporating age-friendly principles into the planning code, the Health and Wellbeing Board about how we monitor that at the Health and Wellbeing Board, about how we can incorporate and develop travel and transport, one of the key complaints and one of the key issues facing our rural issues. And we also want to talk to leisure as well. Prejudice against older people is prejudice against your future self. By adopting this approach, we will become the 100th UK community to be recognised by the Centre for Ageing Better, but we'll also be joining a global movement. But this is not a tick box exercise. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach that's forced on us by outside agencies. It's not actually even about Dorset Council telling a local council or a village what to do. It's about communities listening to each other. It's about older people speaking out and having a voice in different communities, hopefully with councillors as ambassadors. From Abbotsbury to Affpuddle, which is a place I'd never heard of till this morning. From Blandford to Bear Regis. From Cernabas to Cattistock. From Dorchester to Dewlish. From Ferndown to Fontwell Magna. There will be differences in engagement and implementation between urban and rural. From Portland to Shaftesbury. From north, south, east and west. Everybody benefits. Through listening to older people in Bear Regis about the problems they might have getting to a chemist from Bear Regis, we can find solutions that work for older people in Bear Regis. And so Bear Regis moves to become an age-friendly village. But we need to engage with them, and they need to be able to talk to us. In Litchett Matravers, we've just installed a bench at the bottom of a very large field so that dog walkers who are a little bit older have a place to sit down whilst they're walking their dogs. That helps people stay healthier for longer. It helps avoid isolation. The chats that you can have sitting on a bench can help people live more fulfilled lives. And that's the vision, that every town, every village becomes a thriving community, where everyone can live with dignity and respect, where they feel safe and involved, where they're seen and valued as contributors to society and the economy, and where everyone, young, old, those with different backgrounds and differing abilities, everybody can enjoy life as we age. So I recommend this paper to you as a work in progress, and I would ask you to help me finish the process of cooking it.
Thank you, Steve. And are we going to have anything reported by Sam Paul, or yes? Thank you.
Yes, I can come in, Chair. Thank you. So Sam Paul, Corporate Director for Commissioning and Improvement. So thank you, Steve, for that introduction. I'll just pick up a couple of bits from the report that might be helpful context for the committee to consider today. So we know that Dorset's got one of the oldest populations in the UK. Around 30% of our residents are aged over 65 and a high proportion of those over 85. What we've got in Dorset, and we've got a real opportunity through this programme, is to really build on the already vibrant voluntary and community sector that we have here, and also an active volunteering network that really can support this programme. So as Steve said and you heard in the video, this is really about enabling people to age well, to live independently and stay connected within their communities. and age-friendly communities being one of a number of different preventative initiatives that we've got, but offering a whole system approach to really improving wellbeing and hopefully reducing that reliance on more formal care. This programme, which I'll pick up in the recommendations that we've put forward today and hopefully you'll support, is not a standalone programme. So it is part of wider conversations within the council plan priority. So it is included within the Communities for All priority within the council plan. And through the conversations that are taking place in the Our Future Council programme gives us an opportunity to help with that join up and build on some of the cross-directorate, cross-council working that is already happening. So recommendations there around the commission and procurement programme being one, and that's an opportunity to reflect how we commission services, how we invest in infrastructure, and also how we shape public spaces to really support people. And also the Communities Partnership Programme, which is a programme that is looking at the wider community conversations, voluntary and community sector support more generally, and also some of those council community-wide initiatives that are happening. So as building on Steve's point, I think we've got some strong foundations already, particularly from the Five and Communities work, but also Dorset Council is a age-friendly employer and a pledge towards that. There's some great international examples that are considered in the report, but also some UK examples, with Manchester particularly being a leading example, that really show the power of this approach, and with Dorset's demographic profile, I think is well positioned to really be a national leader in ageing well. So the recommendations in the report, Chair, and I'll hand back to you for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. And questions, please. We have already on my list Ryan, Alex, and Jane online. So in that order, please. Ryan?
Yeah, thank you for obviously delivering that report, and obviously thank you to the portfolio holder as well. I just wanted to touch, Fred, again on sort of promotion on this. Are we going to be working with local charities to obviously help promote this at all? Because obviously charities are also a very good sort of community foundation for helping spreading that message for us as well. So are we going to be able to use, are we going to rephrase the question? Is there a way that we can use local organisations and charities to help promote this great piece of work? Thank you.
Yep. Who would like to answer that? Steve, thank you.
Yes, very much so, and not just charities, but also businesses, local agencies. It will fit in very much with the 10-year programme that the NHS is progressing at the moment. Integrated neighbourhood teams, faith groups, and also local councils as well. We do see this as local solutions to local issues, but as part of an overarching strategy.
Sam?
Yes, and building on from Steve's point, we have done some work around our communication engagement and stakeholders in terms of who we need to engage with, how close we need to keep them involved in the programme, and Steve's touched on a few of those there that are really influential to the programme and can help support, raise awareness, and have those conversations that we need to in local communities for local people.
Thank you. Ryan, you're going to come back?
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to come back to that. And thank you for the answer. Chair, I'm going to propose just a little recommendation, if possible, that we just add in the words along the reasons for recommendation that we make sure that we do include promoting it with our charities, and as the portfolio holder has said, obviously for the NHS, local councils, things like that. So I know that the officer's probably going to be looking at me, so was going to ask if we could possibly add that, and I'd like to just put that as a proposal just for adding to the recommendation, Chair. Thank you.
Have we got some support for that as well? We need a form of words if you're going to put that forward. I think some response went somewhere towards that, but I think we need to include not just the local charities, but businesses as well, so make it a bit more wider, but that's up to you if you want to get George to put down some words. Thank you.
I was just going to suggest promoting the age-friendly communities through charities, businesses, and anything else you'd like to be included. Perhaps parish councils, faith groups, and integrated neighbourhood teams, as was suggested. Yeah.
Right. Ryan?
Sorry, yeah, just come back. Yeah, I've just sort of, as the officer has just stated there with those words. Yeah, no, that was exactly what I was implying. So yeah, I'm happy with those words on that recommendation. Thank you.
With that, we have a proposer and seconder. Alex, you're seconding that? Or Byron? Yep. Just a moment. I think we better follow that up unless you're asking questions about that particular thing. You want to make that a bit more.
I'm happy with that proposal, but I just wanted to make a point on the overall strategy. I don't know if that's appropriate before the proposal or after. Seeing that, I'm happy with the proposal.
Well, I think I better refer to George on that one. Do we do this sort of motion recommendation extra at the end, or should we do it now? Okay. So can we do that before your question, Byron? So we have Ryan's motion to add an equity recommendation. We've got Alex seconding that, yes. So, or hands up for those people who would like to back that or think it's a good idea. Thank you. Thank you. Unanimous. Thank you very much. So we'll move on now to questions. Yeah, actually, next question was actually Alex. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Chair. Alex Furman, Councillor for the Mighty Western Ward. I just would like to get members' attention to section 1.4, please, just in relation to the age-friendly wheel and those 8 domains. And I want to take the portfolio's words, if I may, Councillor Robinson, and talk about that wider reach and scope across the council, and almost tie it in with how Sam eloquently presented that data around our particular demographic in this county. I think with what Sam said and what Councillor Robinson's ambitions are for this reaching across what all of the work that councillors and officers do, I'd perhaps recommend that we look at this particular wheel in relation to the same way we use the equalities and environment wheels within reports on how council work. Whether that or not we could do that, but it certainly would put that onus, that emphasis on that work that you're doing across lots of departments and sectors within the council. So I would like to put that forward as a recommendation, if possible. Members would join me there, but I will give George the wording if he requires it, and we've got support for it, Chair.
Thank you, Alex. I'm not sure that in a formal words is already there in the paper, or are we adding to that in some way? you were referring to 1.4 and you were saying we wanted to add something to that or make it into a different form? Sorry, I may have missed the point there.
Thank you, Chair. So the 1.4 gives an overview of what it is, but it doesn't make reference to it being used across council. That 1.4, correct me if I'm wrong, please, Councillor Robinson, this is in relation to the report in front of you. It's not in relation to working across council, is it? And that's the recommendation I'd like to make, is using that across council in the same way that we use equalities and environment.
Yes, Steve?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent idea. It will help bring focus. I think as time goes on, it's very easy for different directorates maybe to wander away from key themes. So actually this would be a way of helping to keep focus. So yeah, I would endorse that. Thank you.
Good. You're in. So if you'd like to put that forward, we'd need a seconder. Yeah, I think we got Stella seconding that. Thank you. So let's have a formal words first.
George, you ready for the words? I've got them. Beg your pardon, sir.
I'd just like to make a governance point on the recommendation. I feel like it would be best to make a recommendation either to the chair of the Audit and Governance Committee or to the Audit and Governance Committee itself, because it's about committee reports and the governance of committee reports rather than going to Cabinet on that particular recommendation.
Okay, so the Health and Overview Committee recommends to A and G that the age-friendly wheel be a part of every council report in the same way that equalities and environment is currently presented. Thank you, George.
Can I say thank you, Alex? Can we say the seconder is happy with that? Good. All those in favour? Yep. We have a full house on that one. Thank you. I think you have now several other people. I think it's Jane online. Jane?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thanks, Beryl. Councillor Jane Somper from Beacon Ward in North Dorset. And thank you for the document. And Steve, Councillor Robinson, thank you also for the conversation that we had, was it last week or week before, with Councillor Parry. It was informative and helpful. And I absolutely welcome this report and your ambition within it. And it's great to see also the WHO framework being used, which I think will strengthen the links to prevention as well. And I do have a few questions. So given the breadth of those 8 domains, are you going to have, or I assume there'll be some sort of phased approach? It would be useful to kind of understand that, so that members will know, what's being prioritised, how that's being prioritised. And the funding case is strong, but it'd be also helpful to have some clarity on the level of investment needed and how you're going to manage if some of that hope for external funding doesn't come through, which hopefully it will, but we can't always be reliant on that. I also think it's important to ensure that the programme builds on, and we discussed this, I think, at our meeting, rather than duplicates the work that's been done under Thriving Communities. And likewise, also the proposed people panel sounds very promising, but it'd be really good to know how that is going to reflect the diversity across Dorset of the population, including, rural residents, people from urban environments, carers, and also those less likely to put themselves forward. Also, the report describes the benefits of these communities, and I wonder if there's a scope for a clearer set of measurable outcomes and timescales, which you'll be able to take to scrutiny at some point, so that can be tracked and everyone will be able to see the real impact over time. So overall, I think it's a really positive and important step, and I'm highly supportive of the ambition. So it's quite a lot of questions in there.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you for those words. And I think Steve will come back with an answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll try to answer as many of those questions as I could write down. I do appreciate that this is not, as I mentioned in the opening, this is not a one-size-fits-all strategy that's going to work across the whole of Dorset in exactly the same way. It's about local solutions in local areas. So what works in one area, as you mentioned, the difference between a rural area and an urban area is going to be completely different. Transportation, access to facilities, the priorities and the urgency is going to be different, which is why that we need effectively local ambassadors in local communities, listening to the voices of primarily older people, but actually all people, and whether that can be facilitated by local councillors, or whether that can be facilitated by local councils, that would be really good to see. And then we can bring some communities of interest together. There are some generic issues that can be addressed across the county as well. One thing that I've been involved with, one thing that I have been supportive of in the past, but not involved with, is women's experience of ageing, which is a specific theme that goes through about how women experience the aging process as being different from men. And that's something that can coordinated and brought together. There's issues around those who are aging without children, about issues of legacy, issues of longevity, how people deal with death. There's issues within different faith communities. So some of these things can be dealt with across on a pan-Dorset level, but others, most of them, I think, should be dealt with locally. And this is about enabling local councils to listen and give them the lens to talk through, or to see through, so that can have local responses. So this is about helping, to use an old phrase, helping local people find local solutions. It's not necessarily about doing the same thing that we've always done in every area and then just adding to it. It's about trying to change the way that we do what we already do to be more age-friendly. Age-friendly as a preventative approach, looking at it from a health perspective. So by helping people stay out of hospital, helping people stay independent, helping people be contributors to the local economy, we're helping the local economy, we're also helping the older person, and we're helping the local council budgets that don't have to stretch to cover care before it's needed. One of the papers one of the issue items that's mentioned in the paper is the £1.5 billion that Manchester has been able to invest in developing an age-friendly village as part of its development. So there are opportunities for external funding. Foundations such as the Calouste-Gulbenkian Foundation and others are available to fund specific items of age-friendly work. So there is external funding, lottery funding can be brought in to develop this, but it needs to be coordinated and brought together. Finally, Jane, you mentioned monitoring. One of the things that we will have to do as part of our ongoing development with the Centre for Ageing Better and also part of the World Health Organization is an ongoing review of our work. A lot of this is not quantitative work, it's qualitative. And so we're forming questionnaires that we can put out on a regular basis about issues around people maintaining their dignity in later life. Do people feel respected within their communities? Do people play a role in society? Do they volunteer? Do they go to the library? Do they go to the gym? Can they report for themselves that they feel healthy? Do they feel in control of the things that happen to them? Those are quite qualitative issues rather than quantitative, but all of them feed into a narrative that helps people feel healthy, and therefore stay independent. There are going to be the quantitative statements as well, such as those that go into hospital, those that come out early, those that go into hospital within the usual 90 days, and the things that some of which are already being monitored by scrutiny. So there will have to be new ways of monitoring this, but these are all ways that we can be advised by other areas that have already gone through the process, as well as develop our own. So I think that's an answer to probably 80% of your questions, but the rest of them disappeared.
Chair, may I come back?
Sure.
Chair, thank you. Thank you very much. That was pretty comprehensive. I suppose I want to ask you directly, in terms of measurement, what you are actually wanting, what you want to be able to see as your success measurement. Now, there'll obviously be different areas of success, but what do you want to see, and how are you going to ensure that you get that data fed back to you, that you know that this is working? And I also just, as I said, enjoyed our conversation and look forward to having, further input with you into this.
Steve? Thank you, Jane.
Yes, thank you. I've got half an hour on this one, I think. I think in brief, I think what we need to be very careful of is that we don't, as a council and as an executive team, monitor outputs rather than outcomes. And I think sometimes we fall into the danger of just monitoring the outputs of how many people were processed or how many people were met or what budget was met, all of which is necessary for part of the management process. But my, I'm going to say vision, is for outcomes. And that goes back to asking people, how do you feel? And it goes back to those earlier questions. Do you feel that you've got dignity in later life, or are you just being processed? As we get older, we get ignored. We become invisible. Not all of us, some of us have loud voices, but generally, we are not considered to be the mainstream. People are amazed if we learn a new skill. Like video editing, for example, because people that old shouldn't be able to do that sort of thing. Sorry, personal issue there. But it's about feeling valued. It's being able to say, I feel that I am a part of society rather than I am being ignored by society. I feel I have control over the things that happen to me rather than I have been stuck in a cardboard box and just fed until basically one day I die. It's about treating elder people with the respect. It's about regarding aging as a strength rather than as a weakness. So probably an overlong answer, it's about making sure that we ask the questions that monitor outcomes rather than just outputs. And I think people like Carol Jones is already doing an awful lot of that, and I think there are already a lot of really good examples existing within Dorset that we need to learn from, rather than try to reinvent wheels as well.
Thank you, Steve. Words of wisdom. But I think there's a lot of older people that are wise, and that's not respected.
Chairman, if I may just come back.
Sorry, go on. Who's
Thank
speaking?
you.
Because I can't hear.
Me, Beryl.
Jane. Oh, Jane.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. Sorry. Just to
Carry on.
come back.
Yeah.
Steve, I'm very glad I asked you that question, because your answer was far less formulaic and much more speaking from your I don't want to say your heart because that's a bit mushy, but you were speaking, it was completely authentic, and that's really helpful to understand your real thinking behind this, and you articulated that really well. So I appreciate you sharing that your way of thinking on that. It's much clearer now what you are actually looking for, what the outcomes are, and what you're hoping for, and how this is going to benefit the people that it's going to touch.
Thank you, Jane. So I think we'll move on now. I think Stam wants to speak. No?
Okay, very quickly then, just on that point, and it probably ties in Steve's point nicely with the conversation about the wheel that Alex brought forward, and the 8 domains that are in the report and conversation around the wheel are a lens of which we can provide some measurement against all of those. So just thinking about some of those examples, transportation, better usage potentially of more community transport schemes, some satisfaction surveys around that, housing, number of age-friendly homes that we might do, or adaptations that we might do to existing homes that we've got. Social participation, what's the attendance like at community events, what are our volunteer engagement rates looking likely, and then some others, respect, social inclusion, feedback from some of those older people panels, and so on. Well, we also do have some more of those, particularly as a management, those detailed KPIs that we monitor around delayed into formal entry of care, what our need is, what our demand is. So this programme will support some of that, but I think it's that much more local-led, personal piece. And some of the work we've just done on the survey will help support some of that going forward. But some real helpful points from Councillor Somper. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. I think for all of us, this is a very welcome paper, and I think that it just makes everybody aware how important it is to be very friendly to every age group, but it's particularly those that are older, especially in Dorset, we have got 30% of people over 65. So it is very welcome. Thank you. One other, I think Byron has got a question, or have you passed over? I do, Chair. Yeah, okay.
I do, Chair. Was there somebody else over there first?
Alex Brenton, yeah, thank you.
I'm not a member of this committee, but I came along because I was interested in this one particularly, and the housing one, because there's a lot of wonderful ideas and wonderful proposals, but the big issue that I'd like to ask is we are where we are at the moment, and we've got the local transport plan out to consultation. And I would really like to know that the authors of this report are going into the transport plan and encouraging very much a spreading of public transport to the isolated villages, because the big problem with old age in rural communities is not being able to get to things. Generally speaking, I think old people in rural areas are relatively healthy because they have to walk everywhere. But that's not necessarily going to get them very far. So I would like to, the issue of help for community transport, off-peak shopping trips, outside venues, things like that, is absolutely vital if you want to stop rural isolation and keep people involved in their communities and not dependent. So it's just, I'd like reassurance that the authors of this report are putting in quite a lot of input into the local transport plan about community transport.
Thank you, Alex. Steve wants to come back on that one.
Oh, yes. There's a principle in Japan that they call first mile, last mile, that actually they have bullet trains that go all over the place, but actually getting the first mile from your home to the place where the bullet train leaves can take as long as you're on the train for, and then getting off the train to where you want to go. So first mile, last mile is quite a principle, and yes, there is quite a lot of lobbying going on at the moment about rural transport, as you know.
Did you want to come back, Alex?
Happy with that, and I will continue to nag.
Well done. Right. Yes.
Chair, thank you very much. Byron Quayle, Blandford, Forum Ward. And in fact, the questions I was going to put forward have been asked by other members. But I just wanted to make a bit of a statement. Although I massively support this, I also remember when the Armed Forces Covenant came out. And it's a great little thing you can put on like a badge somewhere. And it meant nothing. It meant absolutely nothing to veterans. And only recently, when they've been pumping substantial amounts of funds into that, has there been some sort of tangible results. So all these businesses I've spoken to have got Armed Forces Covenant approved, something or the other. So what does that mean? They go, I've got a badge. And as lofty and as admirable as this policy is, or the strategy, I get the same sort of sense. It's, we'll kind of go to people saying, can you try get a bench somewhere if that works out somewhere? But there's nothing that mandates an organization to say, this is a policy and we expect X, Y, Z. Because, as we all know, the thing we're standing away from is it's funding. If Dorset Council isn't going to say, well, hold on, we will pump £5 million into this, so parish councils can bid for funds, etc. It's just a, could you do this? We would like you to do this, and if you don't do this, well, thanks. And, you know, I support it. Do I think much is going to come from it? You'll have your small victories. I'm not going to take it away. I'm not taking away from the aspiration. I think it's great. Massively supported. Just think we'll be sat in here in 5 years' time, and if somebody says to me, Byron, when you were a councillor, did that make anything real, tangible difference? I'll probably say no, it didn't. But it was a good policy if we could get it done. That's my only concern.
Yes, thank you, Byron. That's Steve will reply to that.
Thank you, Councillor, I think, for your support. I agree. I think there is a danger of tokenism that we see with the Armed Forces Covenant, that people just sign up to it and then, you know, it's on the letterhead or it's on the website somewhere. It doesn't actually mean anything about recruitment or support or any of the issues that actually they should be signing up to. The way, and I share your fears. I've been involved in this sector for 12, 15 years. And when it works, it can be great. In New York, they have an age-friendly map of all the shops that are age-friendly up and down across the west side, most of it, so that people who have disability, people who are elderly, know that actually if they go to that shop, there's a place to sit down, they can use the loo, there's a place to get water, they may be dementia-friendly and supportive. That helps. By being part of that register, that helps the business get more customers. So there is an economic motivation for them to be involved. And so that works quite well. In Canada and in Japan, they have built care homes that are integrated into community rather than on the edge of it, so that the community has to go into the care village to access the gym or the wine bar, and actually they get to meet people and be part of the community. I would like to see that happen, and I don't see plans for that at this stage. In, again, upstate New York, they have something called naturally occurring retired communities. We're just recognizing that the demographic is now old enough that actually the whole community needs to address issues around transport, dropped curbs, age-friendly housing, steps, lifts, things like that. For me, this will stand or fall on the political leadership. And I think if we have energy and if we can sign up to it as councillors, then we can carry the flag. And that involves sufficient resources and emotional support being given. Material being given to councillors to be able to actually say, this is what it means, this is what it would look like, and showing people how to do it, I think will be quite critical. And I do think, coming back to one of the first points, that actually making sure that we have cross-directorate working, so that when we're looking at building, when we're looking at transport, when we're looking at things, we do take in the views of older people. So, yes, there is the danger of your understandably cynical view coming to pass, but if you don't have a vision and if you don't push for it, then it certainly will. So I take on board what I would count as a warning, that if we have to have the vision, we have to go for it, and we have to have determination that is more than just a paper that can be drawn down from a shelf.
Thanks, Steve. Byron?
Chair, thank you. And just to follow up on that, and I completely agree with that. So then would you commit to building an age-friendly village in Dorset if we are putting our money where our mouth is? Because I would support that.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair, through you. We already have one, apparently, in Wimborne. I found out about it last week, but I'm up for more. We're talking about developing the area in Bridport at the moment, which is quite a large area. Where we're developing Sydney Gale House. That area around that, we want to have as multi-generational living, opportunities for young workers, opportunities for older people. The whole thing about drop curbs, access to chemists, access to hairdressers, places for people to gather and to share community. That's part of my hope and ambition for that area. Commit is a big word to say when I haven't talked to the portfolio area for finance. I will say I would love to, and I would like to, and it would be my ambition to.
Right, thank you both. Thank you, Steve. I do think that everyone's had their say on this one, and I think we can actually now wrap it up. The recommendations, we need a proposer and seconder and a vote needed. So we've got those recommendations that are in the paper. There's 3 of them. Endorsed Dorset's application for age-friendly accreditation by the World Health Organization. 2, endorse the integration of age-friendly principles into whole council strategy and planning considerations, including adult social care, locality practice, commissioning and strategic planning. 3, through the council's OFC. What's OFC? Sorry? Our Future Council, sorry, I should know that one. Future Council Programming, Commissioning and Procurement and Community Partnerships Programme. Integrate age-friendly principles into design of infrastructure, transport, housing and public spaces. And then we've got the 2 other items that we've added, and George will read those out. Is that all right, George? Pardon? Oh, sorry.
They were the recommendations around promoting age-friendly communities, and the recommendation about the age-friendly will being a part of committee reports.
Do we have a proposer? Thank you, Ryan. Jindy, second. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you very much, everybody. Yeah, unanimous again. Thank you so much for you all coming along, and it's been a really interesting and diverse meeting. Thank you all for your positive engagement. I'm sure that we will go away feeling really good after this. Thank you very much, everybody. Oh, right. We have to go through the next. Oh, yes. Well, we got through the papers. So let's go on to the next item, which is 10, which is the Sorry, George, I've lost the place. Yes, committee's work programme and executive forward plans. Does anybody want to query anything on that or add anything? If anyone wants to add anything or think they would like to add anything to that, would they please send me an email and include George, because I think George can say yay or nay to it, or whether it should go to scrutiny. So that's good. So if anyone got that. We have no exempt business, so I can close the meeting at about 10 to 9. And thank you all for coming. I won't repeat what I've just said, but really appreciate all your inputs tonight and all of the papers that have been put forward. Thank you so much. Good night, and have a hopefully